Well, Andy, I'm Leon Santos, your host for today's panel on logistics in Vietnam. Andy and KV are usually quite a hard act to follow, but I have to say this was the most heavily subscribed session in all of the conference. And that's firmly down to my two distinguished guests here who have taken time out of their busy schedule. So, Hiep is CEO of Transimex Corporation. It's a leading publicly listed logistics company founded here in Vietnam. Mr. Hiep is also president of the Vietnam Logistics Business Association. And Dhruv Narain is a partner at Moller Capital. That's an infrastructure fund which targets high growth markets. Dhruv has over 20 years of experience in investing in infrastructure, asset strategies, and he's lived all over the world, New York, London, I can't name the rest. But thank you, Dhruv. You flew halfway around the world to come here, so many thanks for your time. So just to set the scene, about 6 months ago, Moller and VinaCapital came together to launch an investment platform targeting logistics assets in Vietnam. Why did we do this? Well, just to recap some of the sound bites you've been hearing today, because the answer should be fairly obvious. This is a very hot topic for Vietnam. So you heard our keynote speaker talk about infrastructure as a key risk, as a key need for Vietnam. Then you heard about the CIO at Nam Long talking about the difference between the infrastructure in China and Vietnam. I mean, obviously Vietnam is a few years behind China, but there is a gap to go. What we've seen is that because of Vietnam's growth, because of its emergence as a manufacturing hub in terms of supply chain diversification, because of its openness to global trade, there is huge demand on the infrastructure here for moving goods in and out of Vietnam and also around Vietnam. There's huge demand for storage and warehouse space. So all of this means that there is a very clear opportunity that we see to invest in logistics. So who better to help us understand about this opportunity? Just a very quick word on time. I think we're going to finish at 3 p.m., so we'll try and finish a little bit early and have some questions from the audience. So, Mr. Hiep, can I ask you first, when you talk to potential investors in your business, what are the key messages you convey about Transimex? I mean, what areas of logistics do you focus on?
You know well that Transimex Group is the leading company in logistics in Vietnam, and we know well that logistics industry is one of the very high growth industry in Vietnam at the moment, and we serve for both import export, means import exporter, and also the local consumer, and we are investing much into improving our infrastructure and facility for serving logistics services. So that is our...
Tell us a little bit about the facilities and where you are based, in the north and the south.
We are owning and operating almost our facility in all of the key region in Vietnam. For example, Ho Chi Minh City, Bình Dương, Đồng Nai, and Da Nang, Hải Phòng, Hưng Yên, Hanoi. It's all of the key area in Vietnam. We are having our logistics center, warehouse, a cold chain logistics. And just a few days ago, we just make an opening ceremony of one cold storage in Long An, in Bến Lức. Is a gateway to Mekong Delta area and the southern of Vietnam.
Fantastic, fantastic. Dhruv, over to you. How about your pitch to investors in Moller Capital and your strategy?
Thanks, Leon. And first, of course, thanks to VinaCap for the partnership and obviously for having me here today. And it's a pleasure to be on the same panel as someone as distinguished as you. Moller Capital is an investor in high growth markets. And we invest in the infrastructure that assists high growth markets unlock their growth potential. Now, if we look around the world today, Most of the high growth markets are in this part of the world, and within that it's very easy to narrow down to three in particular: India, Indonesia, and Vietnam, all of whom have existing high growth in the 5 to 6% over a sustained period of time, GDP growth that is. They each have a working age population that is robust and growing, which is not the case in terms of demographics around the world. And they have governments that are excited about unlocking that growth and investing in infrastructure to unlock that growth. Now, as we've heard across the day earlier today, and infrastructure generally has a multiple correlation with respect to unlocking GDP growth. So very often you see, for example, if there's power generation that is built, then you will see a multiple of the growth in power generation come as a result of the GDP growth. And the same is true in other areas of infrastructure, including logistics, transportation, etc. And we believe very strongly that in investing in those sectors, in those countries, not only can we make strong returns for our investors, very strong returns for our investors. We target north of 15% IRRs in, as VinaCap does as well, in relatively low risk sectors. But equally, we unlock potential in the country that we're investing in. And that goes to sort of the ethos of the group, which is to do well while doing good.
Thank you, Dhruv. Mr. Hiep, just back to you now. We've heard that Vietnam is projected to have some of the highest e-commerce growth in Southeast Asia, in this region. So can you tell us a little bit about what are the long-term trends driving the development of logistics that you've seen? And are you more focused on domestic market? Is it exporters?
Well, the e-commerce growth every year now is about more than 30%. And so it's one of a very high growth of the trend of logistics in Vietnam at the moment. So many companies in our logistics community is pay keen attention into serving of e-commerce logistics. But in Transimex Group, we are still not yet pay attention directly into e-commerce. Of course, we get involved partly of e-commerce. We are still serving to the traditional industry. First, it import-export. Secondly, for local consumer. That is, I think, of the two secular trend of driving the logistics industry in Vietnam at the moment. Of course, in future, we will look into how to serve directly into e-commerce, means B2C. Now we are still pay much attention into B2B logistics business. And at the moment, we are focusing majority into cold chain logistics. We think that this is a very important and very potential industry in Vietnam at the moment.
Why do you think that?
Because, F&B, food business, according to a statistic recently, that 25% cargo need to store in temperature control warehouse, and cold chain logistics is one of the very popular trend in the world at the moment. So we are trying to focusing much into cold chain logistics.
And what's the overall market like for cold chain in Vietnam at the moment?
You know well that Vietnam is one of the country who export a lot of seafood, fruit, agriculture product, and this is also a part of a cold chain logistics supply chain. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you so much. Dhruv, back to you. Just wondering, where does Vietnam sit in the global and Asian chain for, Asian context, I should say, for logistics and supply chain? Could you give us some context here?
Sure, and a very exciting point is the short answer. I think, look, if we take a 35,000-foot view, obviously in terms of policies, we had the U.S. ambassador here and Biden here recently. From a U.S. policy perspective, there's a China plus one strategy to a lot of manufacturing, friend-shoring, and similar concepts that the U.S. has. All of that should, in the coming decade, lead to rapid growth in terms of export capability and desire in some of the key markets in this region. And I think, I talked about them earlier. I think we see India, Indonesia, and Vietnam as all being key to that story in the coming decade or so. I think, so that is incredibly exciting. And that'll be across the board, we think, in terms of the need for warehousing, in terms of the need for improved logistics on the transportation side, both in North and South Vietnam, on the road, on the rail, and also to ports and airports. So the entire ecosystem there. And then obviously to back your point around cold storage, we very much find that equally exciting. In a lot of emerging markets, anywhere between 30 to 60% of produce rots before it gets to market. In the most industrialized countries, that number is in single digits. So there's a vast opportunity there through the entire refrigeration chain and through improved logistics to reduce waste and get more food to market in a more efficient way, wherever that market may be, export or domestically.
Thank you. So back to you, Mr. Hiep. Transimex does have two very interesting international investors in your shareholder list. Obviously, you've interacted with them. One is a logistics company, if I'm not mistaken. We won't name any names, but tell me a little bit about what you've learned about their plans here and what, echoing what Dhruv says. Why are they interested in Transimex, and what are they planning to do in Vietnam?
Maybe you remember that VinaCapital used to be our shareholder, right?
Yes, yes.
And of course, we have two major shareholders at the moment. One from Japan is one of their representatives to be here, and another one from Thailand. And both they are logistic company also. And we have quite a good cooperation in terms of how to grow, how to develop our logistic service at the moment. And for AP Moller Capital also, recently we had some discussion. You know where that AP Moller is a big group, and under the name of long time in Vietnam, Maersk Line is the biggest shipping company in Vietnam at the moment, and serving in Vietnam market quite, I think, 30 years ago. And we have some discussion about how we can cooperate and co-invest in the future, of course, in logistic infrastructure. And I think we are quite welcome with foreign investor, how to develop our facility, our infrastructure for better serving to our customer.
Dhruv is very interested in your last point, but I should say, so it's really about transfer of technology, bringing ideas from the global context into logistics in Vietnam. That's part of it, right? In terms of the investors coming in, there's a lot of international logistics companies, obviously some funds as well in investing.
Like I told you just now that we are welcome of all of investor who bring the new, of course, opportunity, including the modern technology into logistics. And taking this opportunity, I would like to say something about logistics industry in Vietnam. The value of logistics industry in Vietnam now is, according to World Bank calculation, it's about $50 billion US, because the cost of the whole logistics industry in Vietnam is occupy about 18 to 20% of GDP. So we can easily to know that the value scale of logistics industry in Vietnam is about 50 billion US dollar. The growth annually is about at least 15%, 1.5. Because logistics serving majority for import-export business. And last year, you know well that our revenue of total import-export is more than 700 billion US dollar. So logistics industry get involved the whole process of import and exports. So we can say that one of the most potential industry in Vietnam is logistics. And government also recently quite paid attention on issuing new regulation of regarding logistics, control, management, something. So that we can say that they are quite paying attention about how to develop logistics industry in Vietnam. And nowadays, the level of development of logistics industry in Vietnam quite equal to the regional country, especially in Southeast Asia country. Of course, you can compare with Japan, Korea, but now almost of the new software, the new technology, even the percentage of automation on logistics is quite developed in Vietnam at the moment.
I see. Great to know. So I guess the point here is that logistics has a direct impact, as coming back to your point, Dhruv, on the growth of Vietnam, and it's a very critical sector. What Mr. Hiep was also referring to is this year the Vietnamese government has really stepped up its efforts in terms of building out infrastructure. For example, roads to connect north and south, railway projects, seaports. All of those things are undergoing. And it's really, the scale of the development is really massive. So let's look a little bit at the other side of the coin. May I ask, what are some of the challenges that you need to solve here still to have a faster development, more efficiency? Because you mentioned just now that the cost of logistics in Vietnam is about 18 to 20% of GDP. That's quite high. But obviously Vietnam is an emerging market. If you compare it to much more advanced market, that cost goes down to under 10%, for example. So please tell us about the challenges.
The most challenges is now we are lack of infrastructure. Of course, 10 years ago, the number of warehouse, number of seaport, quite appearing and developing quite much. But generally, we still say that we are still lack of logistic infrastructure and need more improvement. Number two, the railway is still not yet developed. Quite a long time ago, it is quite very high inquiry from the community, from the logistic industry. Number three is we usually talking about master plan from the government. Master plan. Of course, the government, central government master plan and provincial master plan are still not having enough and to match with the development of the logistics industry. For example, in Ho Chi Minh City at the moment, the industrial land given to logistics still very small. And most of the land is utilizing for residential project. And we in the association, we many times propose to the government that giving more land for the logistic infrastructure. And of course, some other factor, but the most factor of challenges of the logistics industry is like I just saying.
So, I mean, obviously logistics is very much tied to the land story here, right? So it kind of sits within that context of all of the approvals that you need in terms of investment certificate for new development and things like that. But at the same time, we've seen, some significant investments. Lego is building a factory here, over $1 billion, and that'll be completed in, I think they've broken ground already, that'll be completed in 2025. You can see, in the news, almost every second week there are new manufacturers putting facilities into Vietnam. I was reading today about one of the suppliers to Samsung is building a factory in the north to supply parts to Samsung. So Samsung has always been a huge investor in Vietnam. It takes up a very large percentage of our GDP, in fact. But now you're seeing the ecosystem around that build out as well. So, Dhruv, what is your impression of challenges in Vietnam?
No, I think very similar to what Mr. Hiep said. I think this sector, infrastructure in general, but logistics especially, needs to very often be policy led. And so we need clarity in regulations, and we need that openly communicated with the international investor community. And then the capital will come. And obviously we hope to be at the forefront of that, and we think very much that the policies are coming, and as you've also talked about. So I think that is the key. I don't even want to call it a bottleneck, because I think it's something that is being addressed, it's understood, and it's being addressed. And I think that will lead to large-scale projects, which we already hear about, with respect to rail, with respect to warehousing, and ports. And that's very much the story of the next decade.
How have you seen that policy development work in places like Africa or India? I mean, you've worked in Indonesia for many years as well.
Yeah. So I think if we take India as an example, the last 9 years it's come leaps and bounds. Special units within cross-departmental or cross-ministry units are set up. For example, in India you have Gati Shakti, which is a unit that spans trade, ports, investment, etc., to unlock the potential of the rail network from inland container terminals into ports. And free up rail capacity and create more rail capacity. And it takes often cross-ministry or cross-departmental sort of organization in order to do that. And India's really unlocked that over the course of the last 9 years or so. So I think maybe that's one potential idea, because very often these things are cross-disciplinary.
Yes, understandable. Mr. Hiep, can I come back to you a little bit? What do you see as the next areas of growth for Transimex? I mean, I know you're a publicly listed corporation, but can you give us a sense of, I mean, you mentioned cold chain, so clearly there's demand there, but what else are you in terms of infrastructure? What is your wish list to invest in?
We are still remain our direction in the future. We're still developing our cold chain logistics, especially in the cold storage, in the whole key area in Vietnam, together with developing our total and integrated logistics service to our customer. Customer means import-export customer and the local consumer market. Of course, we together with M&A some other similar logistics service which we need to enlarging our ecosystem in Vietnam. As I told you before, we would like to increase the level and the utilization of AI and software into logistic management, and to increase the level of automation on logistic management. This is saving a lot of cost, saving a lot of labor, saving a lot of human resource. This is our future direction of developing.
So clearly you need a lot of capital from AP Moller.
We are negotiating.
So just to round off our discussion, Dhruv, maybe can you give us an example of a logistics enterprise in Asia or a global context wherever really, that we can try to emulate and build here in Vietnam? Something that's, 10 years out in other places.
No, that's very interesting. And candidly, maybe I haven't given enough thought to this, but obviously, if you look at places like Hong Kong, which very much, well, all of the Asian tigers really, but if you take Hong Kong, they built companies like Swire, Carey, Hutchison, Chung Kong. All of them had a real estate component, to your point earlier. But then they used that real estate component to focus in on logistics, capturing that space between real estate and trade, turning real estate into something that leverages the growth in trade, right? And then built from there, and then went on to aircraft servicing and inland logistics and so on, succeeded there, and then continued to go international, right? And so most of the Hong Kong conglomerates that I've now named started off as real estate, then went into logistics, and are now global in those spaces. Parts of Vancouver are run by them, for example. But I think those are the way that is potentially a path, maybe not 10 years out, maybe they're more like 25 years ahead. But I think that is certainly a model to emulate, I think.
So it really begins with real estate, the real assets, which give them a real critical foothold, if you like.
I think it's twofold actually, because you've got the potential increase. What they've done obviously is capitalize on the value of real estate for the purpose that they're using it for, which is storage, warehousing, whatever it is, but also be able to capitalize on the land bank value of that and trade it in and out of it, right? That's one component, and is very helpful from a capital point of view, because depending on market timing, you can also go in and out of sale and leasebacks on the land. And then there is the development of the operational business around that, which really focuses on the sort of technology and know-how that organizations like ours have, and the Hong Kong conglomerates have, which is how do you operationally increase efficiencies, capture the right the trends at the right time, things like cold storage at the right time, rail at the right time. How do you marry those together and build an operating business off of the real estate? And so then they sort of interplay off of each other.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Well, we're coming to the end, so why don't we open it to the floor now, to the audience, to see if there are any questions for our panelists. I guess we covered everything, gentlemen. No, thank you so much. There was a lot there. I think that a lot of ideas and thoughts that need further development. Clearly, just to round off our thoughts, VinaCapital and AP Moller Capital, our partners, see a tremendous opportunity to invest in assets like all the way from seaports, warehouse and distribution, cold chain, bonded warehouses, and other intermodal, as we call it, logistics businesses and grow businesses of scale here. So if you'd like to learn more, please come and chat to any of us. Thank you for being here today, and please join me in thanking our panelists.